Hey, and good afternoon from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I am Paige Browning with a roundup of today's top stories. It's Thursday, January 8th. 2 people in Portland were shot by federal agents today around 2 p.m., according to Portland police. The FBI and the Portland police say the agent who fired was a U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent. The victims have been transferred to a local hospital and their conditions have not been released. This is a developing story tonight, so check for the latest at KUOW.org. Meanwhile, Seattle protesters are renewing their calls for ICE to be abolished.
We want justice, we want peace.
We want justice, we want peace.
We want ICE off our streets.
We want ICE off our streets.
That was the sound at a demonstration last night outside the federal building in downtown Seattle. They came out to protest the shooting death of Minneapolis resident Renee Good, who was killed yesterday by an ICE agent. A vigil for Good is set for 6:30 tonight at Pier 58. Meanwhile, in Seattle, masked federal agents took 3 unidentified men into custody at Seattle's Evergreen-Wischelli Cemetery yesterday. Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes says Seattle officers responded to a call of a possible armed abduction and confirmed that ICE agents were conducting arrests. U.S. Representative Emily Randall says fallout from a childcare scandal in Minnesota is being felt here. Childcare centers there, run by Somali immigrants, are accused of defrauding the federal government. President Trump and his allies have fueled a backlash against the Somali community. Randall said in a congressional hearing yesterday that is driving harassment of daycares in Washington state.
Another provider shared that she was approached by a man with a gun outside her home who interrogated her about her childcare program, and she is now too scared to step outside. Providers aren't answering the phone anymore because of all the threats, which means that parents aren't able to get in touch with staff regarding their children's care.
Elected officials in Washington state have condemned the threats against daycares. In politics today, a teaser on Olympia and what's up with schools. But first, a wealth tax? Seattle's new mayor says she is ready to launch at least one new tax on wealthy residents. Katie Wilson says a city capital gains tax tops her list to discuss with lawmakers.
I think the capital gains tax is certainly the most shovel-ready new progressive revenue source that we have at our disposal.
That's Mayor Wilson speaking to KUOW this week. Capital gains are taxes applied to profits from sales of assets like stocks and bonds. Washington already has a statewide capital gains tax. Last year, it applied to 4,000 wealthy individuals. Washington state's legislative session starts on Monday, and lawmakers will again try to address the state's budget shortfall. OPB's Eric Newman reports.
Bills already filed for the 2026 session include proposals about state protections during immigration actions in Washington, a study about nuclear energy generation capacity, and a slew of proposed tax cuts. One overarching theme of the session will be bringing the operating budget back into balance. Lawmakers tried to close a $16 billion shortfall last year, but the state still faces a multi-billion-dollar deficit over the next 4 years. It remains to be seen whether the budget will be balanced by passing new taxes, making more spending cuts, or both. I'm Eric Newman reporting.
School leaders are also bending the legislature's ear. Faced with proposed cuts to the state's education budget, Washington School Superintendent Chris Rakedahl has an idea: reform the state's tax code.
It's broken, and it's time for Democrats to admit that. It's time for Republicans to drop the rhetoric and say all taxes are bad.
Governor Ferguson has unveiled a budget that includes around $800 million of cuts, nearly $150 million of that for education. Rakedahl says the governor did his best with a difficult situation, but the state can't afford cuts to education. He's telling lawmakers to start the tax reform conversation during the upcoming session. Counties in western Washington are still assessing the damage from last month's floods and how much recovery could cost. Multiple rivers set new flood levels after bouts of heavy rain, including the Snohomish River. Lucia Schmidt is director of Snohomish County's Department of Emergency Management.
over 36,000 acres of land in Snohomish County were underwater during the flooding event, which is about 56 square miles of the county were underwater.
Many farmlands and pastures still have standing water. Schmidt says the recovery and cleanup will take months, if not years.
We do know that there's millions of dollars of private property damage within the county and millions of dollars of public property and public impacts as well.
Snohomish and other affected counties have until January 23rd to report damage to Washington State for assistance. A curious business note today. Microsoft says rumors of imminent mass layoffs are, quote, 100% made up. Several news sites have reported this week that the company plans to cut between 11,000 and 22,000 jobs. But Chief Communications Officer Frank X. Shaw took to social media to call those rumors speculative and wrong. Microsoft cut about 15,000 workers last year in several waves of layoffs. Now, our feature story today. Huskies quarterback DeMond Williams Jr. announced this week he's leaving the UW and entering the transfer portal. It's a shocking turn of events after the sophomore signed a contract just on Friday to continue with the Huskies. Williams wrote on his Instagram he was grateful for his time with the team, but has to, quote, do what is best for me and my future. UW has signaled it will file a lawsuit to enforce the contract. Danny O'Neill is the author of The Dang Apostrophe, a Substack newsletter on Seattle sports, and he spoke with KUOW's Kim Malcolm.
Okay, so top line take, how surprised were you by this?
I was shocked. On Friday, when the school published announcements that DeMond Williams had re-signed with Washington, it really hadn't even been on my radar that that was a consideration. DeMond Williams came to Washington with Jed Fish, who had recruited him to Arizona, which is where Jed worked before taking the UW job. And he's really been the person that they've built this team around, and he was going to be a centerpiece of that, and now he's indicated he's leaving.
If I could just back up a bit, Williams says he's entering the transfer portal. For those who don't know what that is, I mean, I'm guessing it doesn't get you to Hawaii from Seattle in the middle of January, but what is it exactly?
It's such a funny term, the transfer portal. I imagine an echo happens. Essentially, it is a database of all players who are declaring that they're potentially leaving the school that they've played for. And it's basically just a filing mechanism that informs other teams, other schools that play college football, that this player is looking to leave. And then, according to the rules, those schools can start contacting players. In real practice, at a high-level college football program, which Washington is, this basically signals that the player is leaving. He's going to go somewhere else. So that's, I think, how everyone is assuming this will play out.
Gotcha. Well, it does seem like the University of Washington is planning on legal action here. Would their intent be to actually try to enforce the contract and force him to play for the team next year?
It's hard to give any definite answers because this is all fairly unprecedented. But I don't think anyone expects that the outcome of this is going to be DeMond Williams playing for Washington next year. The phrase I've heard used is liquidate damages, that any legal action, any litigation will be about getting compensation for the fact that there was a signed contract that the school had with DeMond Williams that he is breaking. And I guess it's possible it could affect his eligibility to play at another school, but I don't think anyone expects that the resolution here is going to be DeMond Williams plays for the Huskies in 2026.
Okay, well, let's talk about what football might actually look like at UW next year. Huskies head coach Jed Fish called Williams the future of the program. So how big a blow is this to the team?
It's huge. He was a really great player and was poised to be one of the top players in the country. Now, the actual impact, how much will this hurt Washington's chances next season? It's not as dire as it would have been 5 or 6 years ago. And the reason for that is, well, Washington now, they're going to go recruit a quarterback who played somewhere else last year. They're going to get someone who can step in right away. I'm not going to tell you that they'll be better off for this, but this doesn't necessarily sink their season.
You know, Danny, college athletics, it's been so tumultuous since the name, image, and likeness era started just a few years ago. There is so much money now that is being chased by everybody. How does this end? Where do we go from here?
There's going to be a lot of people that talk about that. I think that litigation, like the type that everyone expects Washington to pursue, will help establish some boundaries. But the real problem here isn't the money, which you mentioned. The money is the accelerant. The problem is that the money is being pumped in at a time when everything from basic eligibility guidelines to the restrictions on transfers are evaporating. It used to be if a player like Damon Williams transferred schools, he would have to sit out a full season. He wouldn't be able to play for anyone this next year. He would have to spend a year waiting. That's changed over the past decade. I'm not sure whether that's right or wrong, but I do know that that sort of fluidity makes it harder to maintain enthusiasm and to feel like you know the guys on the team you're cheering for.
Danny O'Neill. His Substack is called The Dang Apostrophe, speaking with Kim Malcolm. Next time on Seattle Now, it's Casual Friday. Gas-powered leaf blowers are supposed to be phasing out in Seattle, but they're still here, and our panel has some skepticism about the electric replacements.
When I say a battery-operated leaf blower, I think it's like a kid trying to blow out his birthday candles. This is going to take a while, boys and girls. You know?
Hear that and more tomorrow morning. That's all for today from the KUOW newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst. The interview in today's episode was produced by Shane Mailing. I'm Paige Browning. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See you later.